Right, so unless you've been living under a fucking rock, this last weekend, Leon Edwards masterfully disposed of a Marty fake newsman, Marty Juiceman himself. You know, you can't say that there was a lucky fluke KO this time. He embarrassed him. It was, we're talking three 50-45s across the board. Maybe there was a 50-44 in there. Leon didn't cheat. Okay, but putting that aside, Leon did beat Usman this weekend. I thought pretty dominantly. I think you can easily give that 48-47 to Leon, but that's not what we're here to talk about. Well, it is a little bit. So after Leon gets done dismantling Usman, beating him up in front of the world, and it's the end of Marty Usman. No more steroids, nothing. No more cringe walking around. No more weirdo brother. Once Leon gets that done with, we skip to the post-fight interview with Dana White, and he says that Colby Covington is going to be next for the title shot. Now, let's not beat around the bush here. Does he deserve it? No. Am I happy it's happening? Kind of. Should he have to fight another contender? Yes, but he's not gonna. Dana has decided, which he never does, that Colby Covington will be facing Leon Edwards in the foreseeable future. I reckon we're talking August, September, something along that line. Now, Leon was adamant about not doing that. Colby had to work his way through another contender. You've got Shavkat, you've got Bilal. But no, Dana's really put his foot down. He said, no, and he never does this. He says that the Colby fight is happening. He said that the night Leon beat Usman. Now, I think that there is a reason why this is happening, and it is not because the UFC are all of a sudden, being incredibly nice towards Colby Covington. If you look at the history that Colby's had between himself, the UFC, and Dana White, there's definitely been some rough patches there. I mean, let's not forget Colby Covington exposed Dana White for hanging out with a hooker. Not Dan Hooker, like an Asian prostitute. Yeah, so he's had a bit of they've had rough patches. They are not buddy-buddy. I don't think it's something that Colby's done that has given him this title shot. I think this comes from the fact that they want a big pay-per-view fight, and that big pay-per-view fight is not Colby Covington versus Leon Edwards. What that big pay-per-view fight actually is Colby Covington versus Conor McGregor at 170. Now, how do we get here, you ask? Well, let me tell you. So, Conor's booked in for Chandler. Conor has recently said on a interview with a well-established soy boy and male crybaby Ariel Helwani that he will be fighting Chandler at 170. 170 will be the likely weight, and that makes sense. Chandler's not I know he's short, but Chandler's not really a small lightweight, and Conor's been hitting the weights and been on that John Jones lifestyle, if you get what I mean. So he's looking pretty big right now. So it makes sense for them to do the fight at 170. It'll probably be better for both of them as a spectacle as well, having to cut a lot less weight. They might look a bit better the night of the fight. We might get a bit more action, which is what they have built that card, which is what they're going to build that card around. They need that thing to do well. So they're going to have them at 170. But the other reason that they're going to have them at 170 is because they are hoping that Colby Covington beats Leon Edwards for the 170-pound title. Now, we can get into this. Does Colby do it? I actually think, upon seeing Leon's performance on Saturday night, I think that Leon Edwards has a good chance of beating Colby Covington. I wouldn't put my foot down and say that it will definitely happen, but I think he's actually quite a rough matchup for Covington. Especially an inactive Covington that is, you can argue that it's through no fault of his own, hasn't taken a fucking fight. I'm sure he's been training, but still. So, and I think Leon really showed some areas of strength and improvement in the takedown defense areas and his ability to escape the grappling of Usman. I think it's a fight that he could win against Covington. Either way, they want that fight to happen because they want Covington to beat Leon Edwards. I'm a massive Leon Edwards fan. I mean, I'm a big Covington fan as well. You don't need me to tell you that Colby Covington is a way bigger draw than Leon Edwards. You can look at the numbers that they've had this week. I know the event was built around Leon and Usman, and Colby has been doing better numbers. The UFC recognise that. These things don't go unnoticed. So I think that's something important to take into account. The UFC, whether they like Colby or not, are aware that he is, especially now that Usman doesn't hold the belt and Hamzat's not in the division, Colby is by far the biggest star in that division. And this is a business, and business like views, and they like numbers, and they like money. And you can say what you want about Colby. I think he's fairly entertaining, a lot more than other fighters. Colby is able to bring in views a lot better than some of these other schmucks at 170. So they want that fight to happen because they want to see Colby Covington as champ. Now, in the meantime, or before that fight, they want Conor McGregor to fight Michael Chandler, and they've, like I explained it in a video a few months ago, I think Chandler was kind of picked for Conor because it's a very winnable match. It's not very winnable. It's a winnable matchup for McGregor if you look at the styles and how they compare. So what the UFC want in their perfect rainbow dream world, I guess, is for Colby Covington to beat Leon Edwards and hold an £170 belt, which will be good for the UFC in itself. And then they want Conor McGregor to knock out Michael Chandler whilst weighing £170. Because then because Conor has that privilege. So now that Colby's the established champ at 170 and Conor's coming off a win at 170, Conor needs one win to fight for a belt. Especially if it's in a new weight class where, I think if he got a win at 155, the push for him to win another fight would be a lot bigger. But considering it's in more or less a new weight class, it's borderline untreaded waters for Conor. One win, the hype behind him, he's a cash cow. The UFC is a business first and foremost. They are going to put Conor on a pedestal above the other contenders. Poor Bilal Muhammad. And they're going to make that fight. They're going to make that big money fight between Colby Covington and Conor McGregor. And they want that because we have not had a massive spectacle of an event. And we are kind of low on superstars right now. Adesanya is our star, in quotations, right? Islam's a star, you can say that, for the I don't know what you could for the Dagestani and like the Dubai demographic. Islam is a star for that people in that demographic. Oliveira and Pereira are stars for Brazil, I guess, and Colby I think is the strongest star out of all of them. Maybe Adesanya has a foot over him. But either way, the UFC are going to get what they haven't had for fucking ages at the end of the day. They're going to have a big pay-per-view around two draws, two big, strong draws. Leon Edwards is not a draw at the end of the day. Colby Covington, like him or hate him, is. Conor McGregor, like him or hate him, is. So that's what they're planning to do. I don't think, people talking about, maybe Colby's done something with the Masvidal case behind the scenes getting that title shot. I don't necessarily think he has. I think it's more the UFC have just accepted, all right, okay, they want a McGregor title fight and they want the next best person fighting it, and they're rolling their eyes and they're going, yeah, okay, he's Covington. So they're putting this in place already to put them two together so they can fight off at £170. That's my little theory about it right now. I'm sure I'll be proven right in a few months. You can let me know what you think down below, but I think that's a pretty solid argument that we got there, and it makes sense. It makes a lot more sense than Colby fucking around with the law case. They want £170 title fight between McGregor and Covington.